Well, hello everyone. My name is Maria Ferreri, and this is my senior project that I did for media broadcasting. It is called Hurting for a Very Hurtful Pain. It is a music video that I made using motion capture technology, which I will explain in just a moment. But first of all, I'd like to ask you all a question. Have any of you heard of the movie Avatar? Well, for those of you that have, you probably know that it is a movie that was made in 2009 by James Cameron, and it was critically acclaimed worldwide because it was able to seamlessly blend real-life actors with 3D animated characters. Now, do any of you know what software they used to make that happen? To get those realistic movements? It was motion capture. What motion capture does is they had the actors get on these suits and act out their parts as they would normally. But these special suits that they wore and all these dots they put on their faces were actually recording their actions and turning them into virtual data that I'd like to call motion data. This motion data is then taken and transferred onto 3D models of animated characters and allows them to completely mimic the real-life actors' actions, except in 3D. So to summarize, motion capture takes recorded actions and turns them into virtual data, motion data, and then this motion data is applied to make virtual actions. There are two main types of motion capture. Markered, which is up here, when you put on fancy suits and put all these dots on your face, and it tracks you very precisely. And then there's markerless, which this guy is showing down here, which just tracks your body movements relative to the environment around you and doesn't use any of those markers or expensive suits. Motion capture is seen in television, as in 3D animated cartoons, in movies, such as Gollum from Lord of the Rings, and in some video games and simulation exercises, such as for surgeons to practice surgery. But even though this is all cool and really connects to my project, that's not really what got me involved in this. It was not Avatar, and it was not even motion capture. It was actually this little small freeware program called Miku Miku Dance. Miku Miku Dance is a freeware software made by a guy named Yu Higuchi in 2008. It was made to promote this software called Vocaloid, which I will explain later. But essentially what it is you can download 3D models and load them into this program and then animate them and create 3D animations. So I was fooling around with this in December of my freshman year, and I thought, hey, you know, this is pretty cool. So I said to myself, for my senior project, let's make an animation. However, I failed to take into account a few things. One, human motion is very complex. You can't just move feet up and down to walk. There's head movements, chest movements, hand movements, arm movements, all these little things that you don't notice that go into making motion realistic. Plus, I didn't have any experience making animation. So if I was to actually come up with a full-length film or music video or something of that like, it wouldn't really look that good. It would look very stiff and very unprofessional. And also, it takes a really long time to make an animation. Even for just a short 10-minute flick, it can take months from a team of people to come with a very polished, finished product. So I wanted to see if this was actually possible. So the summer after my freshman year, I sat down in the summer and I opened up Miku Miku Dance and I said, okay, let's try and make an animation. Let's see if I can do this. So after sitting there fiddling with the program for about an hour, this is what I managed to get. Yeah, that's pathetic. That's stupid. That's not going to work for this project. So I was about to give up hope, but wait. I realized that motion capture technology exists, which would allow me to make animations relatively easily. And it didn't have to be thousands of dollars, because even though you can get those really expensive suits and all those dots, if you use markerless motion capture, which doesn't require that, even someone like me could attempt to use it. Plus, another obstacle that I faced, though, was file formats. Now, you may know file formats from, say, Word documents or doc files or PowerPoint files or PPT files. Now, motion data has different file formats, too. And the file format that my Miku Miku Dance program uses is called VMD. However, most motion capture software only uses a file format called BVH. So I was stuck because I couldn't use BVH files in a program that needed VMD files. However, through a blog post I found, there was this software that I found called Live Animation, which could convert those BVH files into VMD files. So I was able to finally have a medium to use those motion capture data inside of Miku Miku Dance. And that little video right there is an example of a motion capture file that was imported into Miku Miku Dance that someone animated and danced. So with this, I was back in business for my senior project. So the motion capture software that I decided to use is called iPiSoft. It's actually two components, iPiMocap and iPiRecorder. iPiRecorder is the recording software. It is the one that will record you actually doing all of the moves in real life. All of the motions in the video were done by myself in my uncle's garage. And then the other one is iPiMocap. And iPiMocap is what you actually use to track the recorded video and turn it into motion data, which you can see up here. This is the view that I had from iPiRecorder. As you can see, there are 4 different angles. I used 4 different cameras in the setup. You could choose different amounts of cameras for the setup, but I thought that 4 cameras was sufficient. The camera that I used was a PSI camera or a PlayStation Eye camera, which are cameras for the PlayStation 3 video game console. I have an example of one right here. It's really small, really lightweight and convenient, and it wasn't very expensive, so it worked well for my project. How it works is you set up, you calibrate it to the background, and you do all the motions and do your little thing, and then later you track it in the separate program. So it's not instantaneous. Now you may be curious about the little setup I had going there. Well, as I said, I had it in my uncle's garage with help from my stage manager, my dad. Thank you, Dad. And this is just kind of a little 360 view. I had my computer here, of course, and then I had 4 cameras set up throughout the garage. I had 2 at 90 degrees to me and 2 at 45 degrees to me in the front. And I covered all of the stuff in the back with white sheets because if you know from a green screen, which is like a solid sheet of green you will stand in front of to maybe have like a beach in back of you, it's really easy to cut out that background to have you standing there in front of something else. So if I could make the background like as solid of a color as possible for iPiSoft, it would be easier for it to find me and track me later in the iPiMocap component of the software. Now, of course, there were many variables when I was using iPiSoft that I discovered throughout the course of this project. One is lighting. Lighting is very key that I didn't realize because iPiMocap tracks by color. So let's say that I'm wearing an orange shirt. If I put my hand in front of me, it's going to create a shadow, and it's going to change the appearance, the color of that orange shirt. And through that, iPiSoft would often get confused as to how I was tracking it because of that. Of course, types of clothing also affect it. So if I were to wear like a black jumpsuit, it wouldn't be able to track me properly if my arms and legs overlap because it couldn't tell the difference because it was all the same color. So I had to wear different colors of clothing for different parts of my body. Also, the types of motion. If I was waving my arms out like this, that's much easier for the program to track than if I was all scrunched up together like this with everything in front of me overlapping. And the position of my motion, too. If I was facing front and I had these 2 cameras on the side and these 2 cameras in front, they would be able to track any movements that I do in front of my body well. Well, if I was turned around like this and I tried to do movements in front of my body, it would be harder for it to track because only these 2 cameras on the side could see what I was doing. So after getting this program together and figuring out how it all worked and everything, I decided, okay, let's see if this works. So in around November, December of my sophomore year, I decided to try this out for the first time. And as for my first attempt, here's a little sample of that. Yeah, that was pretty awful. Now, you guys may have been impressed, but to me, it looked extremely stiff and extremely awkward. This is because mainly I overlooked the time and effort it takes to do something like this. You can't just record it and then track it and expect it to come out with a perfect product, because motion capture isn't perfect. So if I were to actually fix up the motion, it would be great. But with this, I just kind of rushed it out just to see what it could do. And it didn't look as good as you would see if you went to go see like a 3D animated movie. And it was rushed because I was entering it into a contest. Yeah, I didn't win that contest. But it was an interesting experience. So after seeing this and seeing all the things that I did wrong, I decided, okay, let's try this again. So in April of last year, I did a second try about this, using everything that I've learned, and this is the result. Okay, so that was much, much better. Because I knew the amount of time it would take, I knew the capabilities of iPySoft better, I knew the right settings to use, and I actually took out time to fix it up and make it better. So for example, a lot of times when you export a raw motion capture data, the arm will be all jittery, or any kind of motions that you do may have jitters in them. But you can smooth those out on your own and fix it up so it won't be like that. And markerless motion capture specifically also doesn't track certain things, like it doesn't track any hand movements or head movements. So all of those I had to add in myself, and those were lacking in my past video, but in this video they were there. I have a little video right here showing a before and after of the motion that I just played. Over here is what it looked like when I first imported it into Miku Miku Dance without changing it at all. And then the after is after I fixed it up and I made it look a little bit better. As you can see, the before is more jittery. It doesn't have any hand movements or head movements, but the after is much better and it looks more smooth for animation. So after doing that and after proving to myself that yes, this is a possible thing for me to do, surprisingly, I had to work on my final project. And my final project was going to be much longer than my test projects. Instead of being like 1 or 2 minutes, it was going to be 3 minutes and 45 seconds, which is a pretty big jump. I also wanted to use more than one actor at a time, and I had never attempted this before. So I was kind of unsure if it would all work out okay. I also wanted the characters to interact with scenes, such as getting up from chairs or holding on to doors or things like that, and I wasn't quite all that sure about how I was going to make that work. I also had to create a story with my video. I couldn't just have a song playing in the background and characters flailing around. I had to make it look and flow like a real video. So in the end, I had 3 different recording sessions, one in August, one over Thanksgiving break, and one over winter break, where I set up in my uncle's garage and I recorded all the motions that I needed. Then I tried to track it all in iPy mocap after I recorded it in iPy recorder, and that all took about 70 hours. Then it took about 30 hours to fix up the motion in Miku Miku Dance, add hand and head movements, get rid of all the jitters, make it as smooth as possible. And then it took another 20 hours to completely put together the video in Miku Miku Dance itself, and then edit it together and add a few little tiny effects in a video editing software that we use called Avid Media Composer. So all of this for only 3.5 minutes of animation. So without further ado, I would like to present to you my pride and joy, my senior project.
Ai, この辺がとても痛い。きっかけは自分だったのです。傷をつけてしまったのです。放っておけば自然消滅でも痛みがいちいち主張してくるよ。していたら何も見えない。なったものにしかわからない。そんなのに不人気は何ないよ。誰か僕の苦しみを知ってよ。こうなりでこうなりでそんなに刺激を与えないで。なんないでなんないでいちいちはめていちやさないで。もうアウェイもうアウェイと私はそのうち消え去るよ。だから平気のふりして耐えきってもう痛いとても痛い。どうしてこんなにとても痛い。会いたい君に伝えたい。君にだけは伝えておきたい。もう辛いとても辛い。どうしてこんなにとても辛い。会いたい君に会いたい。胸のこの辺がとても痛い。またできたのです。原因特定できません。でかいやつがのさばっています。痛みがヒリヒリズキズキビリビリ黙っていれば知られない。僕以外にはわからない。だから例えばない何させかけない何もないままのライフを送る。そうだねそうだねあなたが帰ればすぐほどの離れ。そうやって自分をごまかし続けてフライアウェイフライアウェイもう私の方から最後を来るやつよ。何ばかりじゃ疲れるね。隠されてるのはなんでしょうね。無理だね無理だねちゃんとまず求めてね。そうそうねそろそろね私の役目も終わっちゃうからね。ようやくね解放してあげるからね。でもですね時々思い出してほしいからね。忘れた方にまた顔出すからね。あんまり調子に乗らずにほんの少しだけでも気をつけていてもうないどこにもない。あいつはどこにも見当たらない。あの痛みはもうどこにもない。もう辛いことはない。もうないどこにもない。君はどこにも見当たらない。痛みはどこにもないはずなのに辛いことなんかないはずなのに。なぜか辛いどうしてこんなに何が辛い。待ち望んでいたことなのになんだか何かが物足りないよ。もう痛いとても痛い。今度は何がとても痛い。もう痛くないはずなのにまた胸のこの辺がとても痛い。
So now that you've seen my senior project, I'd like to explain some of the technical aspects of my video. One thing that I mentioned before I showed the video was that I wanted to have more than one actor on the screen at a time. As you can see, I have accomplished this because up there, that's the scene where I had 3 people at once, actually. So how I did this was I set up in my studio, I recorded each part separately, and I just kind of remembered where I was. Like I would mark it sometimes with like a tissue box or a piece of paper or something so that I wouldn't accidentally like kick myself when I walked around. But I just kind of timed it to the music, and I used the music as a guide when I was syncing all of the motion up. So I just was mindful of where I was at each point in time, and then just combined it all in Miku Miku Dance into one scene. Running was a big challenge because as I recorded it in my uncle's garage, I was only working with like about a 4-foot by 4-foot square that I could walk around in. So obviously I don't have enough room to run like 18 feet. So because of that, I just did one running cycle and then I looped it. However, I failed to take into account that running is not just matching up the feet. It is chest movements, hand movements, head movements, arm movements, all of that. So when I actually looped it in Miku Miku Dance, there was a noticeable jump every time it looped. And you can see it over here, like whenever the tie goes flying everywhere, that's where I looped it. And there really wasn't anything that I could do to fix that per se, but it's something that I'll keep in mind for future projects. But yeah, that's how I looped it. And I also only ran it in a straight line. So for this scene over here, where they had to turn down a corner, I actually had to move the stage itself and not the character. I did use a process called keying in this video too. So I mentioned earlier, if you stand in front of a green screen, you can cut out the background and put something else there. So I wanted to have it so as this character ran across the screen, it would reveal the title. So I had the background picture, then I had the character running on a green screen, and in Avid Media Composer, my video editing software, I cut out that green and just had the character there, and then put the title in between the character and the background and just had it fade in as the character ran. This is what my workspace looked like in Avid Media Composer. There isn't much editing on the video part because all of that was exported from Miku Miku Dance. As such, most of the video effects that I used in this video were all done in Miku Miku Dance and not in Avid. However, I did add all of the subtitles in Avid, and the sound effects at the beginning over here I also added in Avid to make everything come together. As for the song, you may have been confused about the song because it was not in English. No, it was actually in Japanese, and it was by an artist called EZFG. There were two different versions of the song, and I combined them into one in Audacity for this project. They were sung by a software called Vocaloid, which I mentioned earlier. I said I was going to get back to that. Vocaloid is a voice synthesizing software, and essentially it takes voice samples from real singers and puts them into this program that can then manipulate the voice and have the character sing any speed, any pitch, any tempo, anything that you desire. The Vocaloids that were used in this video were VY1 and VY2, which stands for Vocaloid Yamaha 1 and Vocaloid Yamaha 2. You may have heard of Yamaha, the company that makes pianos. They also made these. VY1 was the feminine voice, and VY2 was the masculine voice. Now, the reason that I'm mentioning this, and the reason it's important, is because it's connected to the Miku Miku Dance software itself. You see, Miku Miku Dance was originally created to promote Vocaloid software and to get people to know, hey, this exists, it's pretty cool, maybe you should check it out, and was used to make promotional videos and music videos for Vocaloid software. So the fact that I could use Miku Miku Dance to create a promotional video for a song sung by Vocaloids, I think is something that's really important to me. Now, as for the meaning of the song, you may have gotten lost, but essentially it's a duet between a guy that's struggling with this abstract thing called his pain. It's never really made clear what the pain is. It could be an addiction pain, it could be depression, it could be maybe a lover, but it's just about this struggle and the fact that sometimes even when you think it's gone, it might not be there, and it can have lots of different interpretations depending on who's listening to it. But in case you missed the meaning, I found a similar song in English that can give you a brief 15-second summary of everything that was going on in that video. So yeah, that's basically it. Now, for this project, I had to integrate it into different subject areas or tech areas. So I integrated this with math, quite obviously, because of the timing in the videos, you know, with minutes, seconds, and frames and all of that. But also with the software that I used, iPySoft, in order to track my motions and turn them from recorded actions into virtual actions, it had to use a very complicated algorithm. And this algorithm is what made all of this possible, and of course that has to do with math. With electronics, it had to do with all the different software that I was using, because this project of mine was made through a variety of different programs all working together to make this product. And of course, it incorporates media because of video composition, such as what shots look good, what kind of lighting should I use, what mood do I want to evoke to the viewer here. All those things were running through my mind when I was creating my video. Of course, I did run into some problems. Motion capture is still pretty difficult, and I was still kind of unsure if this whole thing was going to work out okay, but it did, so that's good. Motion capture isn't something that you can just get out of bed one day and say, I'm going to do motion capture today, because It doesn't work like that. There's a lot of time and effort and planning that goes into making something like this that you have to take into consideration if you want to take it on. I also ran into problems when I was using the software Live Animation to convert the BVH motion capture files into VMD files, because sometimes the files wouldn't convert quite right. So for example, I had a file that when I converted it, one character's arm just did a complete 360 for no real reason. It just kind of happened. So I had to fix that, along with fixing up the motion in general. Also, my expectations were like up here for like feature film quality of video, where my actual abilities were kind of down here. So I had to find like a middle ground between my expectations and my reality. And I had to lower my expectations to meet my reality. My consultation was with Mr. Denbrock, your awesome guy. He basically told me to connect with my audience and make sure that they know what I'm talking about and relate it to them, because this is kind of really complex and may be a little bit confusing. Also to explain everything that I was doing and explain what was going through my head and all of the problems and all of the software that I was using. And he also asked me a very important question, which is, will motion capture make actors obsolete? And I'd like to tell you that is false. Motion capture is currently not perfect or cheap, but like all technology, it continues to get better and faster and stronger and all of that. So it will definitely see more widespread use in the future. For example, maybe your next lock on your car will be a certain gesture that you make in front of it that unlocks the doors. But it will not replace actors, because much like Vocaloid, a voice synthesizing software, has not replaced actual singers, motion capture, which can create virtual actors, will not replace real actors. In fact, I think it'll give a better opportunity for, say, small companies first starting out that want to have multiple actors in their movies. They can just hire one actor and use motion capture to have them play 10 different actors. So you can get 10 actors out of one person to cut down on production costs and maybe make a vision that a small company has come true, even if they don't have a lot of funds like the bigger companies do. As for my conclusion, what did I learn? I learned a lot. Time management, I know everyone says that, but it's kind of true, because if you have this project that's really this big, you need to stay on top of things. Also, I learned exactly what goes into making animation. I have come to respect animators a whole lot more for what they do, because man, it's very time consuming. And even though you just sit there and watch it for 5 minutes, you might go, well, that was okay. It had a lot of thought and effort behind it. This can help me in the future, because using the skills that I learned doing this, I mean, not everyone can say, hey, I've made a 3D animation in high school. So having this in my belt, my arsenal of stuff, I can have this to show colleges, to show them my abilities and what I can do. And it also shows my discipline, because the fact that I actually went start to finish with the project this big and this complex really can tell people, wow, you know, you really stick to it, or you can accomplish really great things. So thank you for listening. If you have any questions, you may ask them now.